listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome into the GM Shuffle. I am Geoff Schwartz. That is Marty Hurney. We are presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. It is draft season, Marty, about a month away. We're already changing positions and watch too much film. We're not going to do that on this show. We're going to break down today the running backs and the tight ends for you. We'll continue our series the next couple of weeks before our mock draft on April 20th. We'll try to hit all the positions, and we'll talk about where those guys fit in, how we view them, how Marty views them as a former general manager and front office executive. We'll do that. We'll talk about NFL news and notes, and we'll give you some wagers. The NFL win totals have dropped, so stay tuned for that in the show, Marty. Let's get right to it. News and notes around the NFL. I know you were excited to talk about Trent Williams and the Niners' contractual dealings with him.
Yeah, so last week they did not execute his $10 million option bonus, which would have put extra years on his deal and lowered the cap number. At 38 years old, the 49ers decided not to do that. So his cap number right now is, I think it's about $46.5 million on their cap. Now, it was 38 to begin with, but if they did the option, it would have gone down. So now that, there are talks that they're trying to get the number down to extend them. But when you put yourself in this position, you really limit your options. And listen, I did this earlier in my career, and I made mistakes of pushing money back to try to clear cap room. And these days, the media, the fans, everyone wants to talk about your salary cap. And it looks like, if you don't spend your salary cap, if you have a lot of room and you're not winning, people think you're not trying. Well, that's not true. It's how to build a team. And you really don't. We talked about Lamar Jackson last week, about the situation the Ravens are in with a big number in the last year in his contract. Now Trent Williams, listen, at 38, they probably don't want to extend him, but I don't know what you do right now. I guess you just have to find a way to make the 46 and a half number work. But Geoff, we had talked before the show, and you thought that a trade might be possible. But do you really want to be forced to trade your left tackle because of that? If you want to do it, fine. But your value's gone down because his number is so high, because, you've pushed money back. And now when you don't do the option, I mean, the number's just so high.
So, what do they do here, right? I mean, there was talk about the Chiefs wanting to trade for Trent Williams, but again, that cap number, the Niners are going to have to eat that, right? So if you're going to eat that, you might as well keep it on your roster. You just have to play it out this year, right? Essentially, like, this is just what it's gonna be, Marty.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this, Geoff. This Lamar Jackson, and you phrased it perfectly. What do you do? And what you've done is you've given all the leverage to the player's agent. You really don't have any options except for releasing the player, trading the player. But it's hard to. I think it would be very hard to come up with an agreement that would lower his cap number and get to a deal that both sides agreed to. I guess you could do something where you put voidable years on it and do something like that. But I don't know whether a player like Trent Williams is going to take a pay cut at this point. And so they're kind of it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be, of course, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They have a lot of amazing moves in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to make this work, but it just puts yourself in a bad position. Doesn't give you a lot of leverage, gives all the leverage to the other side.
So, the void years, Marty, why is this a new thing? Is this something that was ever discussed when you were general manager?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I used it all the time. That's why I got in trouble. You can.
But what? Okay. So let me reframe it another way. Why was it not talked about or publicized in the way that it is now?
I think you heard it. I think you heard it several times. I mean, I think because I don't think people care. The public and the media, they just want to see as much talent brought in as possible, and they want to see teams moving and what they think is trying to win. And it's just not until you get into cap jail, so to speak, the people start going back and second guessing your moves. But what it does is, see, to me, this is all about planning. And again, I learned through the years that, you know, everybody wants to win right now, and you can go out and mortgage the future. It's not the right thing to do, and you have to plan 3, 4 years out so you don't get into these positions. Um, it's always been there, Jeff. It's always been there.
Yeah.
You could put it a years out and they void for, something that is sure to happen. But I think teams have really gotten reluctant to use it, because it's a credit card mentality. It just does just push money down the road and has the potential to get you in this situation. So, teams are going to do it. Not all teams do it, but it's still, to me, it's the mentality right now that we have. As far as, you're always hearing how much cap room a team has. Cap room doesn't mean a thing. It's cash, right? Because cap room, we just talked about, you can make cap room anytime you want by doing something like this, putting voidable years on a deal, pushing money back. But that's going to get you in trouble at some point. So, the job of the general manager is to plan these things out 3, 4 years in advance. And it's something I learned the hard way because, again, early on, I made those mistakes and we got into cap trouble. Really, you just want to do that where you have a plan in place. And that's why I like what Miami's doing so much right now. It looks like you have a plan in place of how to build your roster. And then you have to know when to let the right people move on. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes.
I want to continue on this path for one more question, and then we'll get to the Dolphins because I do want to discuss that. It's a very interesting topic. Um, Explain to people the cash, not the issue, but why that is more important than the kind of the caps. I think people look at the salary cap, and there are a lot of people that say, "Well, it's fake, right?" And your point is, you can move money around, you can make the contracts whatever you want to be, you can void out the years, you can move stuff back and back and back, but eventually that bill does come due. Marty, can you explain the cash part of this?
Yeah, and just like business now, every business, teams have budgets. The general manager has a budget. You meet with the owner and the account, the front office people, the CFO, whoever it is, and you do have a number of cash that you can spend in a particular year. But the thing about the difference between cash and cap is, make it simple. Let's say you give a player a $10 million signing bonus over a 5-year deal. Well, that 10 million spreads out as amortized over those 5 years. So only 2 million counts in that year of the signing bonus. But 8 million is pushed back over the next 4 years, 2 million each year. So if you decide to release that player, when you release him, if it's before June 1st, all the remaining signing bonus accelerates into that year. If it's after June 1st, it stays into the next year. But it's cash is always going to be more than your cap number for a player in multi-year deals because the signing bonus is amortized out equally over the length of the deal.
Let's move to the Miami Dolphins now, who traded Jaylen Waddle for first round pick. I thought that was expensive, but the Broncos need a wide receiver, and they got their guy. Look, I love what the Dolphins are doing with accumulating picks. We see this often, Marty. Right, new general manager comes in, new head coach. We're stripping it down. Right, we're stripping the parts out that we did not sign. These big bloated contracts. You're out of here. We're going to have the draft picks. You guys know how I feel about Malik Willis. I'm not going to go into that rant again. But the Dolphins, Marty, feel like, at least in the first couple months, they're doing the smart plan of how to rebuild this team.
Yeah, this is about planning. And listen, I check myself because I try to ask, are you biased? Because I remember John Eric Sullivan. He was Jerry Sullivan's kid, and Jerry Sullivan and Richard Williamson were the two best wide receiver coaches I had ever been around. And John Eric Sullivan, I remember out in San Diego when he was must have been 14, 15, but he'd be running around and football's in his blood and he's learned. And then he went to Green Bay, and learn the Green Bay system. And this is really comes from the Ron Wolf tree to Ted Thompson. You talk about John Schneider, and this is an organization that has always built its foundation through the draft. They've secured their quarterback. Ron Wolf traded a second round to Atlanta for Kenny Herrock, his friend, for Brett Favre. They secure the quarterback position. They build through the draft. Now, if they're close and it's time to make some moves, like Ron Wolf signed to Reggie White in free agency, put him over the top, they will do that. But John Eric has grown up in a system that has taught him to build a team through the draft. And I love what he's done here. Number one, you know how I feel about Malik Willis. I think that was a great move. But if he's not the guy, they've structured his contract and they've done things where they can go into 2027, which is supposed to be a very good quarterback class, and they can take one there. But in the meantime, he's got 11 draft choices this year, and he can build this team with young players. He's got 4 third-rounders. I would not be surprised if he could get a team to give him a second next year for a third this year to go ahead and do it and increase that draft capital for next year. And in case you do need to move up for a quarterback, that's the one thing Brandon Beane, I know Brandon very well. He's a friend. First year he went to Buffalo, he spent the whole year accumulating draft picks because he knew he was going to have to draft a quarterback the next year. He was trying to accumulate as many draft picks as he could to give him the ability to move up in the draft. And that worked. He did it, and he ended up with his quarterback. So I like the feel of what the Dolphins are doing. The general manager is building the blueprint. He's got a vision. He's with the head coach that he's known and with at the Packers. So I love what the Miami Dolphins are doing.
I love what they're doing, except the quarterback. I think if you're going to be bad, just be bad. Just play Quinn Ewers and have the first pick in the draft, and then you'd have the first pick in the draft, Marty, and 13 draft picks. But having to go trade up and find a player that you would like makes it easier for you. Like they're doing all the tanky things, except with the one position they're not trying to tank yet. So we'll talk more about the Dolphins, all other teams coming next. Jim Shuffle, presented by Dolphins Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
All right, Marty, we're back here on the GM Shuffle. A few more stories to get into before we get into the draft here. A story late last week was floated out there that the NFL is going to go to 18 games, which I think we know is going to happen. But the report is, and this is from Mike Florio, that on the Rich Eisen show, that the extended 18-game schedule would feature only 17 games played for each player. So 18 games, the players can only play 17 games. Look, before we get to the idea that everyone's hurt, so maybe this doesn't matter, but let's just say, Marty, everyone's healthy for 18 weeks. How do you decide who sits in what week? Like, what a crap system this is. Like, are you gonna be like, well, you know what, the right guard and left guard are out this week, and so is the backup tight end, and then your running back's gonna play, but wide receiver 5 is out. And then let's bench one linebacker, Marty, and one defensive tackle. Like how is this remotely even possible to do? Setting aside, obviously, guys get hurt, Marty.
Yeah, I think this is going to almost be impossible to get to because I believe, like me, I think there's a lot of people out there that really deep down feel like 17 games is too much for players.
It is too much.
And the health. I mean, it just, Jeff, nobody knows better than you the toll that your body takes over a 16-game season. Now they go to 17, 18. You can put any spin on it as far as, resting each player each game. So now you've got one game where your star quarterback's not playing and your backup's playing. Is that a home game or is it an away game? I know at Carolina, if with Mr. Richardson as owner, if this rule was in place and we weren't playing our starting quarterback, it wouldn't be at a home game. I can tell you that because he
Yeah.
would not want our home fans to come and not be able to see Cam Newton or whoever the starting quarterback was. So I think this would have a very hard time getting through. I do know the league wants 18 games, so you're trying to come up with different ideas to make it palatable. I just don't see it working because I really think, honestly, 17 is too many from a player standpoint. And Jeff, you know better than I do.
It's a lot, man. I know that they've tried to lessen practice time and time in pads, but that doesn't really change the time. The worst part is the games on our body, not the practice. And the practice obviously can be difficult, but now you're on turf, right? Like for practice now, which is just beat your legs up to no end as well. It's just a lot. It's a lot of football, and the players. What I see though, Marty, is that the leverage we have as players in any collective bargaining agreement is the games, right? And that we
Right.
have not done a good job of taking advantage of any leverage we have to get the most out of what we need to get those extra games played. Yes, we do get a little more money because an 18th game would add on to that, right? It would, someone would have to pay for the 18th game, so you would get more money from the networks and from Amazon Prime and from and Netflix, all those things. But the players do not see a significant uptick in overall percentage of salary cap that we get to keep, right, as our own in any of these moves, right? So it's not like you get an 18th game and they give us 1% more of the cap, right, Marty? We don't get anything for that. We get minuscule amounts of money. No, you get another 1/18th of a game check. I get that, but we're not getting a bigger piece of the revenue pie, right? We're not getting one extra year of insurance. Imagine if they gave us more instead of 5 years post-career insurance, we got 6 years or 7 years or 8 years. Like we're not getting anything tangible that really is changing our life, in my opinion, to go to 18 games. And the players, I don't think have fought hard enough for this. I don't really trust them to do it now. We just hired a NFLPA president who resigned in shame a year ago. He's now the president of our organization. So I don't look if the players move to 18 games, at least get something tangible for that, Marty. I don't think we will.
Yeah, this is the problem, Jeff, is that the salary cap has increased so rapidly and is so high, and there's so much money. And again, I think that's why you see teams pushing back. There's so much money out there, and I think there reaches a point where you just have to stop and do what's best for the players and do what's best for the games. And if you added an 18th game in there, I don't know what you could come up with to make that worthwhile. Just because, again, I'm coming from the opinion that I think 17 games is stretching it, and I realize I understand why they're doing it. It's a great move. The NFL is does a wonderful job, but I just think that 18 is definitely way too many, and I don't know what you could get to make that worthwhile. I just think the money is increasing so much that you just have to be careful not to be too greedy.
Yeah, and I think they're going to do it, Marty. No matter how greedy or not we think it is to do. I don't know how they're going to manage again sitting guys. Do you have to
Players aren't
announce it?
going to let that happen.
Do you have
Players
to
aren't going to
announce
let that happen.
the 18 games, Marty?
Yeah, they can't.
Have you seen? Have we ever said no to anything? Have we ever stopped? Have we ever stopped? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the new CBA was only ratified by a couple votes, so maybe this time around we'd be more inclined to look. We can probably have an entire episode on the NFLPA and the player involvement. My biggest gripe, Marty, is that a lot of players don't pay attention to anything, and then when it's time to vote, is when they start paying attention, and then they have all these ideas. They flood. I do feel it's hard to be a rep or part of the NFLPA when again guys are not engaged for 9 years. In the 10th year, we have a new CBA up, and all of a sudden they throw 1,000 ideas in your face, and you've been working on stuff behind the scenes forever, and all of a sudden now there's pressure to do this thing and that thing. But my number one biggest issue I have is that players keep trading the spring, right, for something
Right.
else. And the spring is the easiest thing we do. It's 4 hours a day. You're with your buddies.
Right.
It's 3 or 4 days a week. Like it's so easy. Trading any of that for harder stuff or for less money to me is a ludicrous trade-off. I don't understand why the players keep doing that, and so I hope we can fix that at some point and make that something that is not what we do as players here. If you like what you're hearing here, the GM Show is even more VSiN Pro, betting splits, power range, sharp analysis, all resign on your first month. Go to VSiN.com/subscribe. Check out all subscription options. We'll do draft in just a second, Marty, but one more newsy thing from this past weekend. I don't know if you saw this. I didn't watch a second of it. I saw 2 highlights on the internet, but NFL people surely had takes on it, Marty. The NFL players played flag football against Team USA flag football, and the NFL players got smoked, Marty. And it's a national crisis that a team of like retired. I saw one highlight clip that had Luke Kuechly, who's now in the Hall of Fame. I think DeAndre Hopkins trying to pull flags against a professional flag football player. Well, we lost, man. What do you like? What do you gonna have? I find it so funny how, like, in the middle of March Madness, how serious people took like this embarrassment for the NFL. Look, the current flag football players are better flag football than NFL players, but you're telling me that Saquon Barkley, in 2 or 3 years, if he dedicated himself to, couldn't learn to play flag football? Of course he could, man. I find the takes of this to be ridiculous, but the real story is this, Marty. NFL general managers and front office allowed their players to play in these games. Joe Burrow took a hit. He took a hit. I was shocked, Marty.
I don't understand that. That would and now those type of things are gonna have to be, and they usually are. I mean, a lot of contracts have things in there, as far as, what you do when you're not at the facility, and again, Jeff, I'm a little bit surprised too now, maybe Joe Burrow's got a little bit more leverage, but I would think that is a non-football injury if you get hurt playing flag football.
Of
You're
course
not
it
at the
is.
facility, right? So you're risking your salary for that year. Now, Joe Burrow doesn't have anything to worry about, but regular players, if they play in that, they're taking a huge risk, aren't they? If they get hurt, it's non-football injury and they don't have to be paid.
But imagine if you're the Bengals and Joe Burrow is often hurt, and you see him out there like taking a legit hit, like they threw him the ball. So he passed the ball, and then he threw the ball, and then he got a pass back. And like you said, sort of making him play in the flag, the guy made a play in the ball and like hit him in the leg. I was in shock that a guy who's often hurt like that played in that type of environment.
Well, it's only gonna take one injury, Jeff. Right now it's just you're gonna hear the line, "Oh, it's only flag football, no contact, no worry about it." How many non-contact injuries have we seen over the years? Some of the worst injuries I've seen were non-contact injuries. Deion Grant, back in the day, we were scrimmaging the Lions, and he blew a disc out in his back. Not hit, no contact, nothing. Just took the wrong step, and he was out for the year. So I would worry about those things. I mean, you don't have to have contact to get injuries in this league. A lot of non-contact injuries. So, boy, I would have done everything I could have if I was the Bengals to stop Joe Burrow from playing. I don't know where they could or not, but it would worry me.
So we've seen other sports where the baseball, obviously, had the World Baseball Classic. Now the pitchers were limited in how many innings they could throw, how many pitches they could throw by the rules of the WBC, but also their own teams told the managers, "Hey, this guy's available. He's not. He can't pitch back-to-back days." We've seen hockey do the Olympics and the Four Nations during their seasons, right? They take a break. We've seen basketball obviously has had the Summer Olympics. If football, which is going to have flag football in the 2028 games, would you allow your players to play in that? They have to train for that. Would you allow them to do that if you're a general manager?
No. I wanted to answer the question halfway through, but no. No.
So
I
like
mean,
if
you're
Cam
here to
Newton came
do a
to you,
job. No.
if Cam Newton came to you and said, "Hey man, I want to be the quarterback for the Team USA," you would just tell him no?
I would say, "No, Cam. Why would we want you to do that? What happens if you break an ankle? It not only hurts us, it hurts you. I mean, why would you take that risk? If you want to play flag football, do it at the end of your career, but don't do it right now. There's too much on the stake. Too much on the stake for you, too much on the stake for the organization, and there's too much on the stake for your teammates." And what would got to Cam is if I'd said, "Listen, if you go out there and get hurt, what do you think happens to that locker room? All those teammates that are counting on you are not gonna have you to count on. So where do we go from there?" And I think that would register with a lot of guys.
That probably would be the one that they really, register with them. And that's enforceable, right? Like you can, that's in the contract, right? Like you can't
Depending how the
do
contract works. But yes, I mean, it would be a non-football injury as we're talking.
Yeah, non-football injury. So I have one of those about once a month now. I don't play football anymore, but I have a non-football injury. do something around the house, in the softball field, coaching my daughter, at the gym. I've one of those a month, Marty. Let's talk some running backs. We'll talk about the top of the draft here next. Here's our Tonight DraftKings Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
All right, we're back on the GM Shuffle, Marty. It is draft time. It's running back talk and it's tight end talk. But first, we got to talk about a subject we do talk about often, Marty, but I know you're hot on this one here. Running back value. Now, I'm going to do my piece first, and then I'll let you tell me I'm wrong. But here's my thought on the running back value. I've changed my opinion, right? Because you can change your opinion on things. I would say 7-8 years ago, I was like, no drafting running backs in the first round. Do not pay them second contracts. But I changed my mind. And here's what I'll say about this, is that if you have the infrastructure in place for that running back to succeed, it is worth the first round pick and it's worth the second contract. If you're the Raiders last season and have no offensive line in place and nothing around him, I think that's a wasteful draft pick. Now, Genty might turn out to be great for them, and they have fixed their offensive line a little bit during this time. When Saquon Barkley left the Giants to go to the Eagles, and then he had the 2,000-yard season, people said, well, the Giants should have kept him. No, you couldn't use him correctly. Your offensive line was not good enough. He went to the place where that offensive line offense, he jump-started it, right? He gave it a bolt. You could do that. McCaffrey going to the Niners. It was that, that bolt where everything was in place, and he added that to them. So that's to say this. If you draft Jeremiyah Love, for example, and you have the pieces in place, he can be incredible for your offense. If you don't have the offensive line in place, Marty, I think it's a wasteful draft pick. What do you say about that?
Well, if you don't have your offensive line in place, Geoff, your quarterback's a wasted draft pick, your running back's a wasted draft pick. You're not doing anything because you can't block. So those are the type of arguments that just, listen, I have gotten a lot of grief over the years for valuing running backs as high as I do. But I do for several reasons. Number one, I think they set the tone for your whole offense. I think the offensive line gets more excited. They love running the ball. It's just something that if you have a young quarterback and you're grooming them, that running back helps you develop that young quarterback by getting the ball out of his hands and getting yards running the football. We went to the Super Bowl in 2002. We had Deshaun Foster and Stephen Davis. When later on, Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams.
Double trouble.
And I double trouble. And I just think that, I guess the reason the value has gone down is the fear of injury, right? Because, you do get the ball and running the ball, you worry about a player getting injured. But I think injuries these days can happen everywhere. In 2005, from around 2005 on, it kind of switched. Running backs started losing their value, not in my mind. But what I did figure out is it's the skill sets that you're looking for has changed. You go back to the year that Christian McCaffrey was drafted. And the big discussion was Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey. And Leonard Fournette was the big, strong running back, could run in between the tackles, be your 4-minute guy. Christian McCaffrey's out there, and he can be a running back. He can be a slot receiver. He's got that dual threat. And I think that's what you have to be these days. You have to be able to catch the ball. You have to be a dual threat. And that's where the Jahmyr Gibbses, the Devon Achans, who I think is still underrated. And I think we'll hear about him more next season. But you have to have the guys who can not only run the ball, but be athletic enough to be a receiver, get outside and be a receiver in the passing game. I think the true franchise type guys now are the guys who are physical enough to run between the tackles and help you run that clock out in a 4-minute drill, but then also be athletic enough to line up as a slot, catch the ball out of the backfield. Christian McCaffrey type guy. That's sort of the blueprint now of the modern day running back. But when you see that, I think they're as valuable as wide receivers. I mean, I just think that they have as much of an impact on the game. They touch the ball more. And I just have always loved a team that when you have running backs, I think it's natural you're thinking you're having a good offensive line as well. And it just gives you a dual threat. And the way this game has become, we talk about flag football, and I always have joked. I mean, the game I thought in my mind, being an old school guy who loved the running game, I will always say, gosh dang, are we turning into flag football? This is a physical game, and if you can run the ball, I think you can set the tone. I don't think the game has changed. It really hasn't. You can still control the tempo of the game by running the football. So, yes, I value the running back position, and there's several guys in this draft who I think can come in and be an impact right away.
Well, let's talk to the guy at the top, and then I know you have some guys you've highlighted you wanna touch on here. Jeremiyah Love out of Notre Dame. I think he's fantastic, Marty. I think that he is in the mold of the guys we've seen the last couple of years go in the top 10 and have success immediately. I think you add him to a team like the Titans or the Giants, will help jumpstart that offense. I think Arizona probably needs to go to another direction at 3, but I get why they would be guys to do so. I think if you fell to 9, the Chiefs wouldn't do it now. I think before the Kenneth Walker deal, Marty, they wanted him at 9 and realized he probably isn't gonna make it till 9, and then they went and got Kenneth Walker, right? I mean, I think that feels very clearly what they did in that situation. It does feel like he's going 3, 4, or 5 here. What do you think about Jeremiyah Love in the best spot for him?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to go in the top 5. I look at Bijan Robinson, who again I valued sort of like I do Jeremiah Love, and he
Different
went 8.
runners though, right?
I believe they're different runners. They are different
Different
runners.
players. Yes, different
But
player. Bijan
yeah,
is, I think, a more overall running back than
yeah.
Love is at the moment, and different burst. I mean, like, I know people will look at like maybe like a Gibbs and Robinson, and they've been drafted early, had success. Love is not either of those
He,
players, in my
no,
opinion.
he's not. He's not. He is not. But I think he is probably the guy. He can run inside. He can line up in the slot. He can catch the ball. I think he's just got a tremendous balanced skill set where I don't know whether you can really look at a weakness. Now, you just named 2 of the best running backs in the league. So but I think he's going to be right there. I mean,
Yeah,
Jahmyr Gibbs went in the bottom of the first. I mean, everybody was, kind of
yeah,
overlooked him. And even I had to fight for getting
yeah.
Bijan Robinson on the board where he was supposed to be. Um, I just don't, I have a hard time seeing Love getting out of the top 5, either Arizona, Tennessee, or the Giants. I think if he got to Washington at 7, I can't see him getting past the Commanders. But I just think that he is an impact player. He's a game-changing, versatile running back who has all the skill sets to fit all the needs that you're looking for from the modern day running back. And I definitely think there's a huge gap between him and the next couple of running backs. But I just you look at the Giants. Dave Gettleman took Saquon Barkley at 2nd overall, and he was the reason they had a lot of success. I mean, Brian Dable and Joe Shane came in and won in their first year with Saquon. He left, and they had to start rebuilding. And I just think that running backs can have that impact. So I would, if the Jets didn't have Brees Hall, I could justify them taking him into 2. So I think he could be the most talented player in this draft at his position at any position.
Who are your next couple of running backs, Marty, for you? Look, I mean, I think most people sort of have like Price 2, and then what? Washington, Moss, Johnson, Singleton. So kind of what's your order here?
Yeah, and again, I do like Jadarian Price. Everybody has him there. I think the one thing I saw at the combine when he worked out that I didn't see in game tape, and I wish I could go and seen him live is, boy, he's got a quick twitch. He had a quick twitch on a couple of those drills. I said, whoa, I didn't see that on tape. So I think that he's certainly he's dynamic, he's explosive. He certainly I think he probably goes in the second round. A guy I like close to him, and I would have to, really dig into both of them to decide which one would be ahead of the other would be Jonah Coleman from Washington. Um, he kind of reminds me a little bit of a Kenneth Walker. He is very explosive. He's stout. He's what, 5'9",
Yeah,
225, I think.
he's very thick.
He's
Yeah, he's very big.
he's
Yeah.
really thick. Think he can run inside. I saw a little bit more burst and explosion out of him than I think a lot of people do. I just, he had 31 catches, I think, and so if he can catch the ball. I think he's got that really good short area quickness, sort of like the Angelo Williams did. I think he's an inside and outside runner. You can
Yeah.
definitely run outside zone with him all day. I like this guy, and I think that I would really be looking at him along with Price in the second round. I also like Malik Washington, who you mentioned. Now,
Yeah.
a couple of these guys, Malik Washington, Nicholas Singleton from Penn State, they're taller backs, okay? So they're not going to be as explosive and have the short area change of direction that smaller guys do. But, John Fox always he said, listen, you got to be real careful judging speed from taller guys because smaller guys look faster because they have to take 3 steps for every 1 step of the taller guy. And I always keep that in mind when I'm looking at, taller, longer running backs. And I like both Malik Washington and Nicholas Singleton Washington a lot more. I think he's got more twitch and short area quickness. But I think Jonah Coleman really I would not have a problem with him being the second back off the board.
Yeah, I mean, I watched him very closely as a Oregon guy. He didn't run as well against better defenses. Now that might not be his fault because his offensive line often got gobbled up, but his better games happen like against UC Davis and Washington
Yeah.
State. That's only I know this is the hard part of the draft, right? Like you're projecting what they're going to be in the NFL, not really what their production is in college football, right? So when you see things like that, it's like to me, it's not that important, but it's worth noting.
Yeah, again, Jeff, I've always been a traits guy, and if you see certain traits, I think that when you're playing tougher competition, yeah, your offense line, everything comes into it. But when you see certain traits you want out of them, that's what I go by, and I see a lot of traits out of them.
He definitely is big. He's big and thick. Like that's the type of player. I've interviewed him a couple times
And
in
he's got
person.
some burst. Yeah, he's got some
He does.
acceleration.
Yeah. Yes, he does. All right, let's talk tight ends next, and then we'll get to some win totals. Here's what we're going to Broncos Network.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We're back here on the GM Shuffle. We'll be back next Monday and the next couple of Mondays heading into the NFL draft, talking about news and notes and draft. I imagine we'll be a little more draft heavy next week, Marty. The NFL news seems to be less and less as we move away from free agency. So we'll hit wide receivers next week, and maybe we'll take a peek at offensive linemen or something if we need some more time there. But let's get back to tight ends here, Marty. I know the first one very well, and Kenyon Siddiq, who went to Oregon. I've watched every snap of his multiple times for years now. And a couple of things of note here. Very good blocker. I don't really understand the discourse around him not being good at blocking. He had like 3 games where he's a little bit hurt in the middle of the year. Well, it wasn't great. Otherwise, a dominating blocker. He's not big, though. He's not a big guy. His effort is there. I think he's a little stiff, Marty, as a route runner, but he can catch the ball and run. Like it's not natural for him, I think, sometimes to do that. Also, the last thing I want to mention, because again, I know this intimately. People point to lack of production. It's not because he wasn't open or Oregon threw the ball to 11 different people every game. Like it wasn't just a thing where they needed him to be the top guy. When they need him, when there was a point in the season when Oregon had 3 healthy wide receivers for multiple weeks in a row, he became a wide receiver those weeks. He played very, very well. He ran traditional routes. And so I think Siddiq is very good, Marty. I think he needs to work on a little bit of his route running, his catching at times. He tends to be a little tight as a mover at times. I think he's good. He's a good prospect and will be a top, mid-round, first-round pick.
I agree, Jeff. He's more of a move F though, right? He's more of a move F tight end than he is
He's
a
not that big.
traditional Y. Because
He's really
he's
not that big.
6'3", 241, but of course he's also ran in the 4.3. So he's an athletic, but he's an athletic move tight end that can catch the ball and make plays for you. And again, just like we talk about, the running back position has changed how the skill sets that you're looking for. I think the tight end position has changed as well. You have to be a receiver, but I still like the traditional type tight ends who can block, stretch the seam, be factors in the passing game. But a lot of these guys now, and I think how colleges are playing, a lot of them are more move guys and less
Yeah.
blockers. You've seen more of Siddiq blocking than I have. Can he line up as a traditional inline Y and block well enough?
I think that's not gonna be his strong suit. Like, his blocking this year was very good on the move, Marty, or when he was, like, sort of aligned in a wing. I think if you put him, like, on the ball where he just has to take 2 steps and boom, boom, and engage, it's not what he's gonna do. If he's in a wing and he's sort of working to he gets a little bit of running start, he's good there. If he's on the move across the ball, he's good. Sometimes they had him come out in space, very good in space, but like just like hand the dirt, running outside zone, you have to block a 9 technique. It's not, it's not George Kittle, right? But again, they didn't ask him to do that. As far as tight end, as we start talking about some of these other guys, each one, most of the guys we're talking about now, like do one thing better. They block better or they catch better. What is easier for you to train when you get to the NFL? Is it the blocking or the catch? I think it's gonna be the catching, right?
Yeah, I
Catching,
think it's
like route
I
running.
think it's blocking. Blocking is
It's easier.
toughness and technique. John Fox said you
Look,
can always coach toughness and technique. And I think
interesting.
it is easier to coach blocking because it is toughness and technique. Now, if a guy's not tough, Jeff, you know it. John would always say you can make a guy tough. I always disagree with that. I always thought you were either tough or not tough. But I do think you can teach a guy how to to block average, block okay, but I think if you want a guy who blocks, you have to take a guy who you've seen block well. And I like Max Clare from Ohio State, spent 22 to 24 at Purdue and then transferred over to Ohio State. He's 6'4" and 3/8. I think he's what, 200 and close to 250 pounds. And this guy runs really good routes. He's a hand catcher. He can run after the catch, make yards after the catch. I saw him drag a couple of tacklers 3 and 4 5 yards. And he's a really above average inline blocker with good feet and good hand placement. I really like him.
Yeah.
And he's probably a second rounder. It's going to be different teams. This is definitely a position, Jeff, that you're looking for a particular type. Different guys are going to be attractive to different teams depending on what schemes they're running. And because I do have a preference for the traditional tight end type, I really like Max Clare. But there's also a couple more guys that are excellent F receivers and really could be slot receivers and fit into the wide receiver discussion as far as if I was in the first
Yeah.
round and we had a couple needs and it's wide receiver or say, defensive line or safety or whatever, I think I go the other way because there's depth at both tight end and receiver, and the tight end group's got a lot of guys who can line up as slots.
One of the guys that is sort of a blocking guy first, maybe in terms of a pass catcher, is Sam Rouse from tight end six from Stanford. He is a tight end 6'6", 267. Where do you see him in the NFL?
You know what? He's gonna be a late round pick, Jeff, and I think he's gonna be a really good late round pick. He is. He's the best blocking tight end in the draft. But I think, listen, does he have great feet? No, but he is a strong runner after the catch. He's got a great feel for sitting into his zone and getting open. He's got very good hands. He's a good hand catcher, and he turns upfield immediately and get the yards that are there. I think this is a guy, he is 6'6", 267 pounds. Now, his arm length's really short, 30 and 5/8. But he's got size 10 hands, ran a 4.740. Now, usually that's going to push him down to the third day, down low, and I do think he gets drafted. I don't think he goes as far as a free agent, but 4.7 obviously isn't what people are looking for. But he can drive guys. He's a really good blocker, and he really surprised me as a receiver. His routes, his feel for zones, and really what he did after the catch as far as doesn't do it with quick feet and speed, but he's a strong runner who can get yards and he turns straight upfield. So a guy like that, Sam Roush, I see as a later guy, but it just speaks to the depth. I mean, there's 6, 7, 8 guys here that I think are could come in and help your football team.
Let's talk about Michael Trigg from Baylor. People have him as maybe tight end 2. Interesting because I think people look at, and we'll talk about Sowers in a second, as potentially tight end 2. But Trigg, man, I tell you, watch his film. He's a dude, man. 6'4", 240. He can ball.
He is a very dynamic, explosive receiver
Yep.
who has good hands. Is he more of a slot receiver? He's a definite
Yes.
threat down the seam, but my concern would be that you don't see him. He's really more of a straight line guy, and his route running, I think, needs to improve a good bit. And I think his feel for the position needs to improve somewhat. As an athlete, his ability to catch and run after the catch and the explosion, it's right up there with anybody in this class. I question his instincts a little bit, but he is just such a superior athlete. And if you want to stretch the seam down the middle, he can do it.
Let's talk about Sowers now from Vanderbilt. 6'4", 230. I mean, this is a slot wide receiver right here, right? I mean, he ain't gonna block very well. He wasn't even on the
No.
field for. I think I saw a tweet about it. He was on the field for like almost less than half of Vanderbilt's run plays this year. Siddiq was on the field for like 75, 80% of Oregon's run plays. I mean, that's just two different type of players, right? But does feel like a guy that if you look in the mold, he's not Jimmy Graham, of course. I mean, who's going to be Jimmy Graham? But like that's the idea, right? Like he's not a blocking for you. He's just a big slot.
Jimmy Graham went in the third row. We had massive arguments over Jimmy Graham because
Really?
he was really a basketball player, and he didn't go until the third round, if I recall. And but I loved him, but he didn't have a lot of experience.
The
And the
third round.
question about, and again, in our room, you had to be able to block, and that took him out, and we had massive arguments. Eli Stowers is a guy who he played quarterback for his first 2 years at Texas A&M, and it's that's the athlete in him. Um, can you get him to block? I'm not sure. I think, he's not a blocker. He's strictly a move tight end. He is an exceptional athlete, really similar to Trigg as far as what he does after he catches the ball, the burst. And I think he had a 45.5-inch vertical. So he's an incredible athlete. And if you want a slot receiver, if you want to move tight end, he certainly is up there high. He's just not going to block for you, I don't think.
You you mentioned a tight end that has to play in our offense. I mean, Jeff King's now assistant general manager, Marty, of the
Yes,
Bears.
he is. I talked to
How about
Jeff
that?
a lot. I love
How
talking to
about
Jeff a
that?
lot. What a great
He
job he did. One more
he's
guy,
there.
Jeff, 2
Yeah.
more guys actually, is Dan Valeri from Syracuse, another guy. He played quarterback his first 2 years before moving to tight end. He's 6'4", 245, and he runs really good routes. You can tell he's really smart. I think he blocks well. He'll line up in the backfield. Really dependable. You always know. I mean, he knows the game. He's going to help you from the neck up. So I think he's a surprising late round guy. And then Tanner Koziel, and I'm from Houston. He is a guy who 6'0", 247. The 4.76 tells you all you want to see on tape. His feet are not good. He does not have quick feet, but he's 6'7". He's got great length, great reach, great hands over the middle. Teams 3rd and 7, teams that just want to throw the ball over the middle. I think it's very hard to keep the ball out of the hands.
I know we're on the 2026 draft, but I want to give everyone a heads up for next year. 2027, mark it down. Jeremiah Johnson, Oregon, is going to be the #1 tight end taken in the draft. I don't know, Marty, if you took a peek at him when you watch Oregon's film, dude is incredible.
I love Oregon tight ends anyway.
Jeremiah Johnson, and you drafted what? You drafted 2? 1 at least? I think you drafted 1. Yeah, he just put that away, guys. Jeremiah Johnson from Oregon for tight end 1 next season. All right, Marty. That was our show for this week. We'll be back next week with some more draft talk with some NFL win totals. Have a great week, everyone. Talk to you guys then. Take care, everybody.